It is customary for us when we host a guest here to just honor the guest by saying something about the guest. Advocate Madonsela is no stranger. I think she's well recognized, but there are a couple of things which many of you might not know about her. One of the things that I said, she received an honorary doctorate from this institution, which is an honor in itself. But Advocate Madonsela is, like yourself, an alumnus of this institution. She completed her LLB year at Wits at the law school. Was it when the law school was on the other side, or was it on this side? It was this side, because there have also been changes there. So Advocate Thuli Madonsela is best known by most South Africans as the former public protector. She served South Africa as head of this Chapter 9 institution for a 7-year term until October last year, and oversaw a wide range of investigations, including high-profile ones of immense national importance. Her courage and integrity in defending the people of South Africa against corruption and maladministration have been an inspiration and a source of hope for many of us. She's currently a Harvard Advanced Leadership Fellow. When she returns from America, she is here now, I believe, for a short period, but when she returns again, she will take up a chair in social justice at the law faculty of Stellenbosch University. Now, earlier I spoke to her because I spent 10 years of my life at Stellenbosch, and I said, please enjoy Stellenbosch, but please remember to always come back to Wits. Among her many awards and honors, she has received an honorary doctorate in law from Wits, and last year was named Forbes Africa Person of the Year. In 2014, she was listed among Time magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. And I'll repeat that, ladies and gentlemen, not the 100 most influential people in South Africa, in the world. With those few words, I'd like to invite Advocate Madonsela to come and address us. Thank you.
Great honor and opportunity to be with you this morning. And to Wits, thank you for being my home for many years as a student, and later my 8 years as a legal professional. Thank you for giving me last year the honorary doctorate of law. It's a great honor to be associated with this institution. When I was introduced recently at Harvard, my fellow Wits alumni introduced me as somebody who had just received an honorary doctorate from the Harvard of South Africa. Well, I thought you were going to be offended because personally I was offended because I believe that Wits is Wits. It's not the Harvard of South Africa. There are many things that Harvard does well, and I'm very happy to be based there for a year. And I'm happy that years ago they had given me a scholarship to study law, although I couldn't take it. But I still think that Wits is great in its own right, and there are many things we do better than Harvard. I thought a lot about our discussion this morning, realizing that I would be speaking to people who are not students. I would be speaking to people who may be students, but the majority of them are people who are working and have taken their time to come here. And I reflected on it. Why would somebody decide to come to Wits on a Tuesday morning? That person must be committed to something. Otherwise, you could spend your time doing something else. Even just sitting at home in this winter is something that would give you a lot of joy, but it seems to me that you thought the sacrifice of going through morning traffic today and being with us this morning was important in your life. It then dawned on me that you must be people who want to create a particular kind of world. The world that this institution inculcated in me and my colleagues when we were living here. When we were studying here, we were taught most of the times that the world we lived in was not the world we should be living in. That there was a better world, and that better world was in our hands. And that better world was a world where everyone is embraced, and that your humanity is not diminished by your color, your gender, nationality, disability, sexual orientation, or any other form of human diversity. That as long as you're a human being, you deserve to be treated with human dignity. You deserve justice. You deserve equality. You deserve to be a citizen of a democracy that embraces your humanity fully and allows you to flourish, to have your full potential released, and to live a happy life. That was the kind of world we were taught to be part of. I sense that you are here today because you're still committed to that project. And based on my assumption, which I hope was right, I thought, let me talk today about democracy and peace. Given the fact that today we just celebrated our 23rd year of democracy. We got our democracy, as you recall, in 1994. And we've had this democracy for 2 decades. And the ideal, of course, was a democracy that embraces everyone's humanity. And the Constitutional Court has said many times that at the core of our new constitutional values is the value of Ubuntu. I am because you are. My humanity is tied up with your humanity. And together, we can thrive, and we ignore each other's welfare at our peril. Where are we then today? Can we heal our troubled world? That is, if you agree with me that our world is a troubled one. We live in a world, I thought, excuse the spelling mistake there, but I thought I would say that we do live in a paradoxical time. Our time is the time of the most glorious of human achievements. But it's a time when the most untold cruelties have been unleashed by human beings on each other. Just this morning, we woke up to the news that more than 20 harmless, innocent young people were killed at a concert in Manchester, England. Your first thought about that, obviously, is these are cruel human beings, and yes, they are. But this was not the only act of cruelty. We see these things happening every day. Just a few weeks ago in Colini, a child died. And immediately after that, homes of people were burned down. Here at Wits, during the Feast Mass Fall, libraries that had been there for years, books that had been there for years, art that is irreplaceable, were destroyed. In Vuwani, things have been destroyed. I could count and count a lot of things that are happening, but show that ours is a troubled time. But it's also a time of greatest achievements. I thought, what other time in the world has so much been accomplished by humanity within a short space of time? I mean, the last part of the 20th century was glorious. But the first part of this century, the last 17 years, have been unbelievable in terms of what humans have accomplished through the fourth industrial revolution, technology, ICTs. We're already talking about robots. It used to be a fantasy in movies, but they now have robots cleaning streets. Where I am at the moment, at Harvard Square, I walk into a shop where there's only one person serving on the floor for emergencies, because everything else you do by yourself. You pay, well, it's assuming that everyone is honest. You pay by yourself, you clock your things, and you go out. We have a car, a self-driven car today, among other things. In medicine, this country was the first to perform a heart transplant. And by the way, those are things we don't sell enough. We sell too much of the big five in South Africa. And my son, sitting right in front of me, is always talking about, we need to sell all of these other things. When I speak to my colleagues abroad, not many of them know that this country gave the world the first heart transplant, among other things. They don't even know that we're the ones who invented the creepy crawly, among others. And I could really count probably 1 million of things that have been invented in this country. But not just in this country, in the entire world. We don't have to carry money anymore. If I asked you to donate cash right now, I will find that maybe there's only 10 people with cash in their pockets because of what we've advanced. So it's a paradoxical time. On the one hand, we're the most advanced species on Earth. On the other hand, we're becoming more brutal than animals. How many young girls have been killed in the last few days? How many have been kidnapped? And not just killed in the most brutal way imaginable. I mean, the story of Karabo touched everyone, about somebody killing you just because you said you don't love them anymore, and then banning you like you do an animal. So that's the world we live in. But this is the good world where I, the daughter of a domestic worker and an ordinary general worker, found myself in this great institution, got a degree, and today, from being a domestic worker's child to being named one of Time 100's, most influential people in the world. All of those things were unimaginable in the world we came from, but they're possible today. Why are they possible? Because of the generosity of the human spirit. In my case, my father, having never seen the inside of the classroom and having pulled himself by his own bootstraps, had cars, had built his own home, or at least extended it with the garage and back rooms, he thought education was not necessary. He thought you did need education, but a good enough education to take instructions from white people. He wasn't a bad man. He got me out of school after finishing grade 10 and arranged for me to do nursing, which was already advanced by his standards. From there, when I refused, he kicked me out of home. So I was on my own. But through the generosity of strangers, my first bursary came from the World Council of Churches. When I studied in Swaziland, the money for my studies and my allowance came from the United Nations. When I was here at Wits, I got scholarships again, and I was talking to Prof earlier about beyond getting scholarships, the generosity of human beings here included an office at the time headed by Ingrid de Villiers, where you could go crying and say, I don't have food today. I don't have books. And you would get those books, you would get the food, you would get an allowance, in addition to allowance, because when I was studying here, I already had my first child. So that was the world. What does this tell us? It tells us that the ideal world, where everyone's humanity is embraced, where everyone is taken care of to the extent that they can't take care of themselves, but their potential is freed enough that they look after themselves and they contribute meaningfully to the community, is possible. And it's possible if we do so. But what world do we live in today? Firstly, before I tell you about the world we live in, is if we want peace, we must ensure that democracy fosters the freed potential and improved quality of life and justice for all, with none left behind. Secondly, according to Einstein, peace is not merely the absence of war, but the presence of justice, law, and order. And as long as there is injustice somewhere, there can't be sustainable peace anywhere. You would agree with me. A few years ago, I came across a poem written by James Patrick Kinney. I don't know if any of you have read it. It's written in the 60s in America by a white, male, middle-class Christian. It talks about 6 persons trapped by happenstance. They happen to be just together. It's a dark night, it's a cold night, there's a fire between them, and the fire is dying. Each one of them has a piece of wood or a log, and the fire is dying, and it's cold, and it's dark. The first man looks around. I think it was a woman, actually. She looks around. She sees someone who is not from her church. Not even religion, forget Christians, Muslims. It's just not from her church. And says, she's not going to benefit from my log. She chooses to keep it. Another man looks around and sees somebody who doesn't belong to their race. and says, no, this person's color is different from me, they're not going to benefit from my look. The rich man looks across and sees a poor man, and he says, the lazy poor, he's not going to get my look. The poor man sitting across looks across and sees the rich man and says, the filthy rich, he's not going to get my look, and he keeps it. Somebody who's been historically disadvantaged looks across the room and sees all of these people from historically advantaged background and said, a time to exploit me again? No ways. He keeps his look. The last one is a mercenary. Those people who never do anything but for direct gain. He looks around and says, these sorry people are not going to be able to pay me. I'll keep my look. James Patrick Kenny ends his poem by saying, with death's still hands still holding on their locks, they did not die from the cold without. They died from the cold within. I think in the entire world, the flame of liberty is burning, but is dying. Whether the threat comes from ISIS or some other terrorists, or comes from criminals who feel they want a piece of what's happening in society, but the freedoms we cherish are threatened. Because what is freedom? It's not just the power to vote and the power to be elected. It's the ability to wake up in the morning and pursue a life you desire and contribute to humanity to the best of our ability, free from fear. I mean, at this time of the evolution of humanity, we shouldn't be in the same position as primitive people who were worried about, will I live for another day? We're supposed to have transcended that stage. But here we are in that space, and I think that we are in the same space as James Patrick Kenny's Cold Within. And among the things that we see in society is structural and systemic inequality and poverty, with many particularly disadvantaged groups and communities left behind regarding access to the fruits of democracy and related opportunities. We see a lot of groups and communities increasingly resorting to public protest, and we see a growing trust deficit between the state and citizens. And whether it's here in South Africa or anywhere else in the world, you can pick your country, America, UK, France, Italy. You are seeing that problem. Of course, ours is compounded by historical imbalances where the contours of inequality and poverty do follow the contours of oppression and racial discrimination in the past, compounded by patriarchy and how we treated people with disabilities and extending welfare to them instead of ensuring that we enhance their ability to look after themselves and contribute to society. We're having growing governance failure, including systemic service failure and corruption. We're having growing societal polarization. Colini is one of those examples, but it's not just here. It's in South Africa, it's in all over the world, the question of polarization. But also there are growing unhealthy levels of civic apathy, where people would rather take the law into their own hands than engage with the system. And people tend not to harness existing frameworks for the achievement of equality with emphasis on inclusiveness. And they're taking things into their own hands. And part of the problem is what they see as systemic governance failure, particularly involving unethical conduct and corruption. And people are increasingly resolving this through the courts, but soon there'll be too much for the courts. Just this morning, we woke up to a story where we were told again, Mr. Molefe, we don't know, did he resign? Was he retrenched? Did he go on early retirement? Or he was just on holiday? Unpaid leave for 2 months. In fact, one of my Twitter feeds this morning was quite fantastic. They had a picture of Mr. Molefe where they said he had this long holiday, and here are the exclusive pictures, holiday pictures of Mr. Molefe, and they show him in Parliament sitting on the benches and talking. I know that sounds funny, but it's part of our troubled world. Because an ordinary person who's sitting there, those students that we've heard about, I'm not sure he had Wits. My daughter, Wenzile, discovered at the University of Pretoria that there were students that were sleeping in the library toilet because they had no accommodation. There were students who would eat a loaf of bread for the whole week with water because they were starving. In fact, I met one of them that she rescued from the bathroom. She came to live with us for a few days, and I asked her, why would you subject yourself to that inhuman conditions? And he said, going back to Mpumalanga is not an option because that means going back to perpetual poverty. At least here, my hardship is temporary. There's hope that once I get my degree, I'll be fine. But guess what? How many of those young people are unemployed today after going through that hardship? Then these are the young people who are watching Twitter, who are watching TV, and they're seeing Mr. Molefe, who government tries to give 30 million. That doesn't work out. Takes him to Parliament, tries to make him the Minister of Finance. That doesn't work out. Then he is brought back to work. And the narrative moves from resigned, holiday. And an American judge, Judge Brandeis, once said that when the state becomes the chief criminal, it gives people permission to engage in lawlessness. Thank you. So going today, what really do we need to address these challenges? Former President Nelson Mandela once said that, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but the one who conquers that fear. What is the challenge today? Is if you know what's right, do what's right. How many of us have protested about what's happening? I have nothing against Mr. Molefe. All that they need is to go through a disciplinary process and find out was there state capture or not. Has he given all of those deals to the Gupta family? Is he a Gupta man? I wouldn't even say Gupta. I know people keep saying Gupta, but I think the EFF has gotten it better. They say Zupta. Because all of those contracts are not going to the Guptas, seriously. All of those contracts are going to Ogbay and other companies that are co-owned by President Zuma's son and the Guptas. So you're limiting the scope if you're saying it's for the payment. You're basically saying South Africa's employee number one is failing to investigate whether or not his son is involved in using that power given to South Africa employee number one to benefit himself dishonestly. That's the big question that we're facing today. So the issues of Mr. Molefe may appear to be funny. They're not funny because people will look at what's the formula? How do I stop starving? I need to find my way into the state. I need to find my way to the networks that are in power, and then I'll get a piece of the pie. I can do that in a school governing body. I can do that in a university board, if there's a university board. I can do that in local government. Soon you'll have a system where people are going to say, if you can't beat them, you join them. And then it's not possible for us to get a handle on all of this. And for us, having worked as a pup protector for many years, I discovered that we really do need to change the leadership paradigm in our country. Firstly, we need to see everyone as a leader. From a little child at preschool, or even before preschool, to the president. We need everyone to see themselves as an appropriate leader, knowing that what they do and say influences other people to do and say that. What they fail to do and fail to say influences other people in a particular direction. So it's not by accident that we are in this world where the emerging public narrative are alternative truths. We haven't called it an alternative truth in this country, but what is unfolding at ESCOM right now is a classical case of alternative truths. But it didn't start with ESCOM. It started with Ngandla, it started with Midval, it started with those cases, those SAPS cases, where things were done outside the system in pursuit of personal gain, and maybe society did not resist hard enough. Because if people push boundaries and we don't push back hard enough to reset the boundary where they are, they just keep pushing. They just keep pushing until there's more space for them and less space for us and doing good. I can talk to you about some of the cases that I've discovered. So what has gone wrong? Ethics. What has gone wrong is purpose-driven leadership. What has gone wrong is impact. People considering the impact of their decision. Take ESCOM again. Has anybody thought, what would be the impact of that reasoning? Because people see and people do. Should people in our municipalities do the same? The president had a duty in terms of Section 195 of the Constitution, as interpreted by the court in the case of Khumalo versus MEC for Education, KwaZulu-Natal, to investigate the allegations of state capture. Doesn't matter whether there's state capture or not. It's a serious allegation of tenders, of contracts, of licenses being siphoned to the Gupta Zuma families, of these families being unlawfully and corruptly involved in firing of the Minister of Finance in 2015 and hiring another Minister of Finance, in hiring of many other ministers and DGs. These are serious allegations. Our president had a duty to investigate this. He didn't do so. The matter then was brought to the Pup Protector in terms of the Executive Members Ethics Act, which compelled the Pup Protector to investigate. As Pup Protector, we investigated. The matter is now in court. The president tells the country, I outsourced the investigation by making a report that says a commission of inquiry should continue this investigation. This is the president who knows that. When I started this investigation, I requested additional resources. And the letter specified that this investigation is very complex. It requires a commission-type investigation. And we asked for 3 million, which we didn't get. And as we were investigating, we realized that even if we got the 3 million, it would not have been enough. The matter is complex, and the allegations have a threat of poisoning the waters in terms of public trust. I concluded as a Pup Protector that the best way to deal with this investigation was an open and transparent process under a commission of inquiry. Incidentally, in America, after similar shenanigans and confusion about whether or not the Russian matter should be investigated, They arrived at the same conclusion, that the best way is to have an open and transparent process. And hired a special prosecutor. It's just logical that there's so much at stake, there's so much distrust, you want to restore order. It may well be, by miracle of some sort, there will be a finding that there was no state capture. But we'll never know unless that commission of inquiry takes place. Why am I bringing this case? I'm bringing this case to say to us, to you, as dreamers of the South Africa we hoped for, that the South Africa of our dreams is in our hands. But this is not the South Africa of our dreams. What's unfolding is South Africa derailed. But the kind of leadership we want, that I said, is from preschool to president, where the leaders are ethical, purposeful, impactful, or impact away, and committed to service. That kind of leadership is required of all of us. If South Africa derailed is to be stopped right now, me and you are the ones who have to get on that train of epic leadership, of being ethical, purpose-driven, impactful, and committed to service. In our own spaces, when we make decisions, we have to think about these things. Where we can make sure that there is no social injustice, where we can make sure that we don't shortchange people who are not aware, or that they're being shortchanged, whether we're employers, whether we're insurance, whether we're banking industry, or we are building public stadiums. Whatever we do, let's make sure that we do it with integrity. When we have played our part in advancing our own lives, advancing our people, and not shortchanging others, let's hold others accountable, particularly government. And the rest of the world has seen that it's important that we restore justice in this world and we ensure social justice. Among some of the frameworks is our own national development plan. It talks about social justice, it talks about good governance, it talks about arresting corruption, it talks about all of us playing our part in creating the South Africa of our dreams. The same thing is in Agenda 2063. In fact, the first review of Agenda 2063 is supposed to be in 2023, which is just across. There's lots we are supposed to achieve in terms of poverty, in terms of reducing inequality. And in this continent, 70% of our people are young people. 70% are young people under 30, according to the World Economic Forum. And most of us are unemployed. That's a serious indictment. But what can we do? The question is, what can we do? I've said we can hold the state accountable. But one of the things that I think we should do, though, is find a way to bridge the gap when it comes to inequality and poverty. And the greatest cry, I know you already, all of us alumni of Wits, I know we already support academic institutions, and I know you already are contributing, but it would seem to me that one of the greatest calls right now is to find a way to make sure that everyone who deserves to be at a university gets into a university. Smaller states have done that. We can't wait for government, though. At some stage, government should come to the party, but it's all in our interest to use the log in our hands to make sure that nobody who qualifies to be at a university is kicked out for financial reasons. We also have the power to make sure that once people are at university, there's a system that makes sure that they're not desperate and destitute. I know here at Wits there's a feeding scheme. That's a great starting point. But we can meet the university halfway by doing more than that. From my side as a pub protector, apart from the fact that I've got 2 children who are still at university themselves, I am putting my nephew through university. I'm putting 3 of his sisters through high school. I have started a foundation, a Thuli Madonsela foundation, where I put about 20% of my gratuity when I left as a pub protector into that foundation, which is part of our project is to advance communities, is to build community leaders who firstly develop themselves and make sure they're not a burden to humanity. Secondly, they develop their communities. And thirdly, they hold other people accountable. And part of our premier projects is to make sure that nobody who's a graduate calls themselves unemployed. So that's one of our projects. Thank you. We can tell you more about it. My children are also volunteers at the foundation. They can tell you more, but that's the project. We already have a Canadian lady who's going to assist us with some of the work that the graduates are going to do. We have a 2-stream approach. The one is get them to be IBOs, that is independent business owners. Train them in a particular skill, give them credit, give them business cards, give them computers. But when I spoke at the Harvard Women's Leadership, they said, okay, they now have a computer, they now have business cards, they now have been trained to be IBOs, they have the skills of project management, professional management, etc. But where are they going to get the airtime? And I said, okay, I'm going to approach Corporate South Africa and see whether Corporate South Africa is going to give them airtime. And then somebody said they're going to approach the Gate Foundation for me to see if we're going to get airtime there. Then another person came back and said, what about infrastructure? Not every village has infrastructure. And we said, okay, we'll see what we can do about that. And the third one, can we make sure that they have electricity? Because to charge the computer, you need some electricity. And again, there are easy ways of advancing electricity these days with using alternative energies. But we're not going to go into there. Our pilot group will be the group that needs less resources so that we make sure that we can test if the system can work. The other group is something that we've just started thinking about, is get people to give a year of their life to community service. That was not my idea. It came from a young person, white young male person by the name of Michael, who suggested one of the ways to breach the racial gap in South Africa is to have a community service program where people go to serve at a community of people that don't look like them, don't talk like them, because in that process, they'll learn to embrace the humanity of others. And the people in that community would learn to also to embrace the humanity of people that look like these volunteers. And that's another part of the program that we're going to pilot at the Tuma Foundation. I've spoken a lot. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for the great work that you're doing. Honestly, dear colleagues, the world of our dreams, the South Africa of our dreams, lies in our collective hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Thuli. Thank you. Thuli's graciously agreed to take 15 minutes Q&A. Now, there's a lot of people here, so I'd like to give as many people a chance as possible. So if I can implore you to please, the only person allowed to make a speech today was Thuli. Just make it crisp, sharp question, and we'll do a quick Q&A. Just raise your hand. There's already a gentleman and a lady there, and we'll bring a mic to you.
Good afternoon, colleagues, or should I say ladies and gentlemen, and good afternoon to you, Ma'am Thuli.
Thank you.
It's quite an honor to be here in your presence. To cut it short, I've absconded from work today. And I'm a teacher by profession. And I like the sound. However, there's a narrative, there are two books that currently summarize the current crisis that we face in our country. There's the one that is written by George Orwell, which says, Animal Farm, and all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. And then the other one has been written by an African, Chinua Achebe, Things Fall Apart. And the only part that I can take from that book is the part where the center cannot hold. Currently, the center is not holding. As a teacher who teaches in a public school, I, more or less, if I have to make a scenario and cut it short, if there are 100 matriculants, only 2 or 5 might come to varsity. Out of that 2 or 5, and this is a non-fee paying school, maybe 1 will graduate. Or maybe I can say 2 will graduate, and then 1 maybe will get employment as they keep falling into the cracks. Now, these are multiple citizens who already come from poverty, and they are being recycled back into poverty. Whilst on the other hand, education makes sure that it recycles wealth, and it recycles those who have more money than others. And their generation, more or less, is also recycled. Therefore, the question is, how do we address the injustices that are currently happening in our country? Because this happens year in and year out. And we have an education system that is so pathetic, and it's so narrow-minded, that it only doesn't tap on the best of our kids. And yet, as teachers, at the end of the day, we are not empowered to even make sure that these are kids one day who will be the future doctors and the lawyers who we aspire them to be. So how do we correct that? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm not sure about the absconding from work, supposedly to be exemplary, but I don't want to judge you. You were here because you thought being here was extremely important, and it's going to be important that you explain that to the children, because as I said, when we are leading, people follow us. When people think you're cool, you are an influencer, you could come in with torn jeans. Just because you were lazy, you couldn't sew them. And then people think, the following morning you see everyone has torn jeans. That's how fashion starts. And that's the power of leadership. It's not always you leading consciously. We often lead unconsciously because people are looking up to you. But say you're asking the Animal Farm narrative, those who know, it's George Orwell's story about what happened in the Soviet Union after the Glorious Revolution, and when the liberators themselves became oppressors, using the fact that they liberated you. And apart from the new narrative that was saying all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others, there was also a very, very strong narrative, even though not articulated on that border, that was saying, do as we say, but not as we do. Tighten your belt, but ours will be extended. We'll even just build a longer belt than we have. That's what happened in Animal Farm. And what you're saying is exactly what's happening. Because our own state says, tighten your belts. Teachers will pay you less. But people are reading stories that the king of KwaZulu-Natal is about to spend 1 billion on a palace. Then there was Nkandla, and there are many others. The Minister of Social Development just decided that she has a right to provide protection for her daughter. At the moment, it has cost you 1 million. Your own children are threatened every day. Nobody provides security for them. The children of policemen are threatened every day. Children of army officers, children of my investigators at the Power Protector South Africa, they themselves are threatened. Nobody provides them security. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. But the interesting that our colleague is raising is that that was not in the normal constitution. The original one was saying all animals are equal. And overnight, without people seeing, they added, but some are more equal than others. Of course, this is allegory. It's not real, But it's talking about a real society where rules are changed in terms of how they're interpreted to benefit people who have the power to make and to enforce those rules. But what I would say, though, is unlike the animals in George Orwell's Animal Farm, we're not helpless. We have agency. We can demand accountability. Not by marching for one day, by consistently, every day, demanding accountability. Not by insulting people. One of the things I don't like when people march is seeing those posters that call people names, because in that way you know better than them. When you say you want to change a system because it's improper, you can't introduce your own improprieties. Our Constitution, thank you. Our Constitution entrenches human dignity. It doesn't say that when you are a deviant, your human dignity is no longer protected. Or when you are a politician who has done something wrong, you no longer deserve human dignity. We need to do that. You talk about also things fall apart. Yes, when governance fails, things fall apart. But again, we have agency. We can make sure things don't fall apart. And I come to that school of yours. I would suggest you get in touch with Louise van Rijn. She runs Partners for Possibility. Her approach is exactly the approach we have at the Tuma Foundation. Fix what you can before you ask others to fix what they are doing wrong. Fix what you can before you ask others to fix what they're doing wrong. A lot can be done in your school with Partners for Possibility, and I think for us also we will see how we can help, because at the end of the day, the children cannot wait until we have sorted out governance. And truth be told, there'll always be something wrong with governance. I don't know one democracy where there's totally compliance with the law. In fact, former President Nelson Mandela once said, even the most benevolent of governments have within them people with propensities for human failings. So if we know that, then let's fix what we can. But that center that's not holding, let's not just point fingers, let's do something. Let's air our views. Let Twitter be flooded every day with a nation that says no. The chaos stops right now. Yeah, Mr. Mtetwa, my former colleague at the Pub Protector, I'm not inspiring people to protest. I am inspiring fellow South Africans who are already concerned, because all of you are here in this room, to take it further by fixing what you can and also make sure that you hold others accountable. And if people want to help our colleague there who's a teacher through the Louise van Rijn social enterprise, they can assist. She links business people with schools. What she'll do is to link you as a principal or your principal with a successful CEO or successful business person. And it works two ways, actually. That business person gets to learn about a community that differs from him or her. It's a learning process. And they all go through leadership training. There's been great success in schools where there's been that intervention similar that is being done under Louise van Rijn. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Advocate Thuli Madonsela.
Hi.
Hi. Oh,
Yes.
there you go.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
It's an honor to meet you this morning. I won't give my reasons as to why I left work.
Okay.
It's quite obvious. My question is very simple, and
What's your first name, ma'am?
Duduzile.
Thank you.
Ndwandwe, yeah.
Yes.
I'm in a professional space where inequality is in my face daily, and I'm just not gonna go deep. I'm a professional town planner. I'm in a property space, and the issues around land are very, very personal. Let me just put it that way. With your achievement thus far, I mean, you are a Harvard Leadership Fellow, you became the Forbes African Person of the Year, and I can assure you that 80% of the people in this room right now would agree that you have proven beyond ethic credentials that you have got leadership, the leadership that South Africa really needs. You are a replica of our late Nelson Mandela. My question is, why haven't you answered the call of many South Africans of taking the presidential seat?
Thank you, Duduzile. That's very kind. I really don't have a desire to go into politics, but no, do I think I have skills really in the political arena? So it's not desires, no desire, no skills. But secondly, I'm one of those people who believe that we each have a purpose in life. And you've got to listen to the deepest part of your soul and your passion and follow that. My passion is justice. My passion is empowering other people to be the best they can be. Because we all really have the opportunity to be the best. We just need others to believe in ourselves, and we need to believe in ourselves. And just make sure that we serve humanity to the best of our ability. And for me, the best of my ability is in the area of making sure that there's justice, particularly social justice. I was so grateful that the University of Stellenbosch approached me to join them specifically to work with them around social justice. And my project at Harvard is around how can we achieve social justice in a manner that does change things, but invites everyone to be part of the journey towards this South Africa of our dreams. I mean, we've done beautifully right now. A certain Harvard professor has written a book called Confidence and dedicated chapter 10 to us as a great nation that has shown that with good leadership, you can turn a losing streak into a winning streak. But right now, we are on a losing streak. You're right that we need the kind of leadership like Mandela. Sadly, it's not me right now. But I'm certain that somewhere in South Africa, there is somebody, there is a group of people that can turn our current losing streak into a winning streak. As chapter 10 of Rosa Moskanter's book, which is called Confidence. But part of it is young people like yourself, Duduzile, looking at what can I do where I am to fix these things? What can I do when I am to create the South Africa of my dreams? You say there's social injustice there. Let's see how we can work. You know, come to us. Let's see how we can work in an inclusive way to help people to see that social injustice. This young fellow that I'm talking about, Michael, I sat next to him. He was on the other side of the seat, and we discussed social justice. One of the things he said, which is remarkable, no, when you are angry, you don't want to know why people are doing things. But he said, until we know why, we'll never know how. And the other thing he said, that people do what they know. If we have lived in a society where discrimination was normal, you discriminate unconsciously. Some lady wrote a book, The Alchemy of Racism, where you just do what you always do. Same thing with sexism. People just do what they've always done. At Harvard, I've attended a course on disability law and policy, and the professor, Professor Stein, You know, he's a disabled person. He's come to understand that a lot of people have discriminated against him. He's wheelchair bound. Are people who don't hate him, who don't want to discriminate against him. They just do what they've always done. And the best way to win them over is to understand what's their thinking pattern right now and help them to walk through to the other world. Help them to see the other world. If you do win them over, they'll be your best transformation agent. Remember Beas Naudé? Once he had seen the other world, he was one of our best change agents in this country. In fact, the reason I got an education here at Wits was because he paid for me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Madonsela. My name is Kumbuzo. I must admit, I'm quite nervous, so I've written down my question. And I'm a bit scared of the camera because I also absconded from work. Ma'am, you've demonstrated an ability to fearlessly ask hard questions and get things done. And with that, we admire you a lot, some of us. And there's really not much to ask from you right now because you are currently involved with a lot of things. I just want to appeal to people in this room, especially the black guys. Not that I'm ignoring everyone else. I'm just saying, please learn from her and put your logs together and empower your community, because the first people to suffer when things go wrong, like they are going wrong right now, it's the majority of the black poor in the townships. We've got the tendency to just get good jobs, leave the township, and forget about what's happening in Soweto and what's happening in Alexandra, and that perpetuates the cycle of poverty in our community. And to those that are not black, please do not close your doors when we come knocking for help. Thank you.
Thank you, Skumbuzo. Thank you, Skumbuzo. Let's join hands. And one of them is the fees must fall issue. Let's do what we can. But also one immediate case that I think we need to work on is Kolini. If we don't solve Kolini, it's a fire that's starting, and it's going to engulf South Africa. We need a team there, a multiracial team to go to Kolini, help those people to find each other. We need a team of young people, architects, etc., to help build houses for the people who lost their child and for the people whose houses have been burned. We do need to do something, not tomorrow. We can do it just today, Mr. Mteto. Agree. Thank you.
Hi, Thuli. Advocate Thuli, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
My name is Mangaliso Mdlela. I am an Anglican priest. I have heard on numerous occasions our number one President Jacob Zuma often telling this nation that the church, that the priests should confine themselves to the pulpit, that they do not have any business to engage politically. And I've always wondered, because he has often reminded us that his party would run this country until the second coming. Just on another note, the South African Council of Churches has described this state as mafia state. Your take on that? Thank you.
Thank you, dear colleague, Father Mangaliso. I cannot speak for President Zuma, but I can recall a time when that was not the thinking of the African National Congress. Your name is Mangaliso. One of the people who made an impact in this country is Father Mangaliso Mkhatshwa, who was part of a Catholic bishops' conference that was involved in saying no to apartheid. Beyers Naudé, who I just spoke about, didn't just dispense bursaries. He also was part of a clergy in this country that was saying no to wrongdoing, no to dehumanizing and exploiting fellow human beings. And they were part of the dreamers of the South Africa of our dreams. Alan Bussack, I can mention a whole lot of people from the church who have always been at the forefront of fighting against oppression. I wonder what would Oliver Tambo say. On my arrival at home, my children had a book on the table. I think it belongs to one of them. I don't know whether it's Wandu or Wenzi. But the book was titled Remembering Oliver Tambo. And I just read the first chapter where former President Thabo Mbeki talks about how Nelson Mandela spoke at the funeral of Oliver Tambo, the eulogy. The emphasis of Nelson Mandela was how not to fail Oliver Tambo, how to keep the dream alive, and how to make sure that even though these people like Oliver Tambo didn't live to see us fully in the South Africa of our dreams, but we make sure that we move fast in that direction. I don't think that moving towards that dream means excluding the clergy. They were part of the dreamers of the South Africa of our dreams. Surely they should be part of looking at whether both South Africa is still on the path to the right destination or is derailed. They can also help us to think about whether we have become George Orwell's Animal Farm, which we're at the risk of becoming because there are elements of that. I wouldn't say to the state, though, we've become a mafia state. I worry about demonizing everything and everyone within the state. The state of South Africa includes our judiciary, which is among the best and most exemplary in the state, in the world. The state includes good, honest citizens, good, honest civil servants, who as public protector, I would never have been able to do my job if it wasn't firstly the whistleblowers in the system and those who pointed us to the truth. And secondly, the team of men and women at the Public Protector South Africa who are just honest, committed, hardworking human beings. We should be careful, therefore, to paint everyone with the same brush. Because the risk we take, actually, when we do that, is the wrongdoers feel they're in good company. I think we should isolate the wrongdoers. We should acknowledge that we have great human beings in the state of South Africa, from local government right to the cabinet and parliament. But within that, we have rotten apples, and we need to call them out. We need to make them feel isolated. We need to make them know we know who they are, and what they're doing is wrong. They are derailing our democracy. Thank you.
Hello, Thuli.
Just one.
Thuli,
Yes.
am I the lucky one? I hope
Yes.
I am. Thuli, I'm
Yes,
here.
ma'am.
It's an honor to hear you. I've been looking forward to this talk for a long time. Thank you for being here. My name is Marianne Felix. I'm a medical doctor, graduated from Wits Medical School, and have been focusing on prevention, and it's led me to work with youngsters in Alexandra Township, Alexandra, and we offer yoga to learners at school and to the teachers, because yoga teaches you how to become self-reliant and to discover the leader within you. So the organization is Yoga for Alex, if you want to find out more about it. But my question is, why has the Constitutional Court not been able to bring number 1 to book?
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you for the good work you're doing about bringing yoga to the township. When I grew up, I thought yoga and meditation were about Buddhism and things like that. We have since discovered that mindfulness is for everyone. As a Christian, you can practice mindfulness. It allows you to go within, because often we create a troubled world around us because we are troubled souls. Even the people who have this insatiable appetite for money are troubled souls. And if they were to be able to reconcile with their own souls, they wouldn't need the money that much. So thank you for doing yoga. Hopefully, it's something that can spread across. And I suspect it is non-religious yoga. It's really just about helping people to be still, to be present in their own lives, and to live purposefully. Regarding why has the Constitutional Court not brought number 1 to book, it's because the Constitutional Court does not initiate investigations. It is a court of law. It just takes what comes to it, and it has to operate within the laws. In fact, one of my lectures to people has been about the difference between courts and the public protector, that the two complement each other. The public protector has more leeway to hold people accountable in a meaningful way, yet has less power in terms of taking things forward, like taking them to jail. So the public protector has binding powers, and you don't take only that has been brought to you. The Supreme Court of Appeal, in the case of Public Protector versus Mail and Guardian, indicated that the Public Protector's powers are beyond the court insofar as searching for the truth. Because whatever is not brought to you, you can go and look for it, including following the money outside the state. That was Oilgate, where we were supposed to follow the money outside So if I were to say, where should the solution be? Civil society. The information about who's doing what wrongly lies with us. We need big data, where we can load all of the information about what we know about wrongdoing. No fake news, no calling people spies when they're not spies, and things like that. Just what we really know we must. Not creating stupid spy documents as well. Just produce authentic documents that are pointing at people doing something wrong. Let's do that. And let's work with institutions such as the Public Protector, Auditor General, etc., and place the information there. I know sometimes we're disillusioned about institutions having people maybe that are appointed that we're not quite sure about, but these are institutions. When you think about an institution, don't always think only about the head of an institution, but also even about heads of institutions. Don't judge people until you have seen what they can deliver. Give everyone a chance to do what they're supposed to do, and only when they have performed can you then judge whether they're doing what the Constitution requires them to do. So thank you for what you're doing, ma'am. It seems that say you have the last word. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Advocate. I'm officially off from work.
That's a good one.
My question is on the relationship between you as a former public protector and the present office in terms of the high-profile cases that you handled in terms of advice. Do they come to you to get advice? If they do, what is it that you are providing them to? And if not, what is your take on that? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Just a quick answer. No, the public protector should not seek advice from former public protectors. Neither should any judge seek advice from their predecessor, because it is a personal jurisdiction. You're supposed to make decisions based on your own conviction, your own understanding of the law, your own understanding of the facts. However, sir, if you have dealt with a case, it is normally prudent, at least the Supreme Court of Appeal in the Public Protector versus Mail and Guardian says it's required that when you're an investigator, keep an open mind, and any source of information that can shed light on something should be approached. So if the Public Protector asked me, as somebody who knows some things and someone who sat at meetings and kept notes, if she asked me about information in relation to that, I would provide that. So far, I haven't had such a request. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those questions. I'm going to ask Professor Engela Schlemmer, the acting head of the School of Law, to do the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I would just like to thank Thuli Madonsela from the bottom of my heart. I think everything that we've seen on television up till now, everything that we've read in the newspapers, everything that we've heard about her, we've seen today. Thuli, you are a real inspiration to South Africans. We are truly honored to have had you here today, to have been able to listen to your views on what is wrong in South Africa, how we can set it right. And I think all the emphasis on social justice and improving the potential for the students and the young kids in our schools today and in South Africa will clearly lead to having the dream South Africa that we want. Thank you very, very much for being such an inspiration to everyone. I think you are the leader that you spoke about, the person that leads by example, and that if we follow your ethic, your impact, everything that you do, your service to humanity, we will get the South Africa that we will all be very proud of. Thank you so much. We would just like to hand over a gift of appreciation, Purvi. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to allow Thuli Madonsela and her children to leave the hall before we do. She has other engagements, and unfortunately she's not able to stay behind to have individual talks with each and every one of us. We're very sorry about that, but we really do appreciate the time and the effort that you put in.